what's going on? John Evans here. Today, in this video, we're going to discuss the topic of speed again. Specifically, how long does it take for you to see increases in your sprint speed? How long does it take to get faster? This is a common question a lot of athletes want to know. I'm going to give you the general, basic answer, what I would advise, how long I personally would run any sort of a speed camp or anything like that if you're dealing with younger athletes, and or how long can you expect if you are training on your own to see some of your times increase. Speed is super coveted. Every athlete wants it. When we see it on TV, it catches your eye for a reason, right? Tyreek Hill, NFL, think him, right? He gets so much attention, press coverage, everything about his speed. He dedicates a lot of time to that. I've researched him, but the question of how quick is gonna be a pretty simple one. I'm gonna cover this. I'll give you some tips in terms of how to structure and how to get the most results out of your speed training. That way that the time frame can be quicker, but it is always important to keep in mind this stuff, we're dealing with the human body. We're all individuals here, right? Everybody's gonna progress at their own rate. If you're a little bit on the slower side, you can improve your speed actually a lot quicker than somebody that's more advanced. So there's so many factors we're dealing with here. But first, let's just get into the most basic, simple explanation of how quickly we can get faster. Probably the quickest that we can expect to see significant increases in speed, I would say, is right around that 6 to 8 week mark. If we're timing, sure, I'm a big proponent of timing as often as possible, just because it gives you a benchmark as an athlete. But, by and large, most of you guys are not timing yourself on a regular basis. So I wouldn't even recommend focusing on that too much. You might pick up on some improvements in speed if you are timing sooner. But if I was running any sort of speed camp locally here in Orlando, or if I was running any sort of block with my athletes that I work with at the soccer academy, I would expect it to probably be on that 6 to 8 week timeline before we see anything that's improving. And even then, right, when we're dealing with speed, these improvements are not super significant. They can be for some of the younger, inexperienced athletes, but by and large, these guys are not. You're not going to see anything other than a 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second, let's say, tick off, and even that's ridiculous in a time frame. Obviously, distance is dependent on that number, but if a good, well-structured program, if we're going to have that neurological adaptation, which we know is going to be the case, especially in the early stages of training, we build that efficiency, we build that technique, we consistently build volume with that stimulus, which is high velocity running, sprinting. Over time of us doing that, in about 2 months, let's say, I would fully expect to see my athletes have improved times. Now, that's the quick, short, out the gate answer. Some ways that we can maybe look at improving that in a quicker time period, right? If there's any sort of, let's say, technical deficiency. If we have any sort of technical deficiencies, any sort of things like that we're dealing with our athletes, maybe some posture pattern sort of drills, any sort of technical speed drills, we might be able to see with a coach timing, we might be able to see some improvements there. That's personally why I do think, if possible, we need to be timing our athletes as much as we can. A nice example would be the weight room, right? When we're in the weight room, we have a very, very, very clear benchmark of how our performance is. I know if I got 225 on the bar, how many times am I able to bench that? It might fluctuate a little bit here and there, but I can kind of over time start to get an idea of, all right, well, this is how strong I am. Well, there's no immediate feedback with sprinting, right? When we run, you may finish sprinting, you might be racing, there's some feedback there. But if you're not directly competing with others, what's your feedback? Oh, that felt fast? Okay, well, what's feeling fast? For all we know, you might be fatigued that day, and what felt fast is actually slower than what your all-time PR is. So that's why testing on a regular basis, the laser gate timers are phenomenal for this, right? It's efficient, it's quick. Something even, honestly, stopwatch. Those get demonized these days because it's not 100% accurate, but it's really just whatever tool we're using. If I use it consistently, I'm still going to get some data that I can look at, right? Even if the data is skewed because it's not the perfect state-of-the-art equipment. Now, with that timing regularly, I would expect to probably see my athletes improve and increase their sprint times a bit faster, just because they're able to mentally associate the effort they just gave with the time that they were told. But outside of that, I would say we got to get into some of the technical components, which can get a little bit nuanced, and we need to really give special time and attention from a coaching standpoint, a coach's eye, being able to analyze what that athlete is capable of, being able to use tools, maybe some video analysis, things like that. But if we can improve some of the technical components, you might see some changes in a short amount of time. Now, with those changes, what are they going to be, right? Well, maybe it's just running through some of the mock drills, right? I personally like the A series, so your A marches, your A skips, your A runs. A runs really kind of traditional high knee that a lot of young athletes do wrong, but essentially what we're really looking for there is just developing that posture, specifically in that max velocity position. But if we can kind of teach some of that technique, the elasticity, the ground reaction forces, we might be able to make some technical changes that really will at least improve running form, sprinting form, what should hopefully lead to a performance improvement. We can't necessarily put any sort of clear recommendation or guideline on this because it's obviously dependent on the current state of the athlete. But what you kind of can see out of maybe addressing some of these technical components would be that ability to better execute the movement, that ability to better apply force into the ground, and that will increase times, right? But like I mentioned, this is not something where I can give a time frame on that. I would still really default always to that 6 to 8 week mark for seeing any sort of significant improvements. I don't even really, if I'm running an actual training block, I'm periodizing based off of, let's even say, the calendar year with some of the teams that I get to work with. I wouldn't even test within that time frame, right? If I'm testing every day, that's great. That's for the athlete. I can gain some knowledge out of that. But if I'm having a traditional testing day, I don't really like to even do that very often. Maybe every quarter, so every 3 months. I don't personally. I want my program to be my program. I don't want my program to be testing, right? So we can get caught up in these numbers. We can get caught up in this data. If you're consistently giving time and attention to developing speed, you're going to get faster, okay? Looking for things and looking for short-term gain and things along those lines is really not something that I think should be expected out of speed training. If you want to be faster, right, there's a reason why it's so coveted. There's a reason why it stands out on the television. There's a reason why everybody can think back now to the fastest kid they played with growing up. It's because it's important. It's important for sport. So don't look for quick short-term gains. Let's just look at consistently developing and building the skill. With all that being said, though, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to give some tips for how we can kind of structure that to be able to maybe expedite the process if possible. Really just how can we structure this to where I can get the best of both worlds, right? Because a lot of athletes really struggle with fitting everything in. They read a ton of blog posts, they watch a ton of videos, and everything seems important, right? Speed, agility, jumping, vertical, broad jump, bench press, strength, squats. They look at all these exercises, all these attributes, and then they're like, okay, well, I also got to play my sport. So if I'm going to structure a program for short-term improvements in speed, I would really have to consider, what am I really going to sacrifice? So if we're having that conversation, typically your workload's your workload. You're not going to be able to change that too easily. So we're going to have to manipulate some variables. We're going to have to take some things away. I would say the best time to try to look for a quick improvement in speed is the off season. The reason being is you have time, right? There is not competition. There is not anything going on that's really going to take very much of a physical load, physical requirement on the athlete, hopefully, right? I mean, I know that a lot of the young guys do camps and things like that throughout the year, but by and large, we have a lot more time on our hands, so we can focus on some of these skills. If not, I would say you're going to have to consider some things, right? I mean, we don't have to do everything at the same time, and we also don't have to do things in isolation. So let's just find a middle ground. That's going to be up to the individual athlete, but we're going to dedicate a lot more time to sprinting. So let's say we'll do an 8-week block. I would probably like to see, if we haven't been sprinting very much, I'd like to start, we go slow to fast, short to long, soft to hard. Soft to hard is surfaces, short to long is distance, slow to fast would be the actual speed itself, right? We can do tempos, we can do shorter accelerations, 10 yards, where we don't hit maximal velocity in the first few weeks, just to build that capacity in the tissues so we avoid some injuries. Beyond that, I would probably then get into progressively increasing volume. So let's say we start out at nice, easy 120, 150 yards of 10-yard accelerations. So maybe we do a set of 10 straight at the beginning of the workout. Maybe we'll break it up, do a quick set of 5, walk back for recovery, maybe take about 60 seconds. We'll do 5 of those, rest a few minutes. You can do some exercises in between, come back, but you get the idea, right? And we're just gonna slowly build. I don't wanna see 20% jumps in volume. So if you did 100 yards, I don't want you to even really go to 120. Let's just add a sprint a week and just slowly progress. We can play around with those different variables. Like I said, it's gonna be individual, but what I'm trying to stress is really just, let's start small, let's start slower, let's start shorter distances, and let's just build. Let's build that capacity. We're gonna wanna consider things like weight training. Now, if we're gonna up the sprint volume, you're gonna have to dose that in appropriately, but it is important and it can help, right? Improving strength will help, especially you more basic beginner athletes that have not been exposed to very much speed training. Obviously getting stronger is gonna build that foundation and help. So we're gonna wanna focus on weight room activities. You can do upper lower body, or we can do full body training, and then we're gonna have some high days of high intensity sprinting. If you want, we can mix in a lower day as well. That's an option, maybe some tempos, which that's been kind of popularized again in the recent literature here through Charlie Francis's works are kind of circling back around. So a lot of guys are talking tempo runs. We can work those in. That's basically you just running at, say, 60, 70% of what your top speed would be, and we're just gonna do it to cover a lot more distance, a lot more volume. Helps build the technique, kind of a form of like a lower intensity, probably too much for a traditional active recovery, but it's keeping the body moving and moving in a specific way, right? Specificity is important in training. If we want to get fast, we need everything within our program in that block, in that period, to be geared towards speed. So with that being said, we kind of have those big pillars. We want to hit some form of weight training. We want to have our sprint work in. Where you start is going to depend on your skill level within the movement itself. And we just want to slowly progress as we go over the course of this 6, 8, 12-week program, whatever it is you decide to run. We want to stick to our bread and butter, right? I don't want speed ladders, agility ladders, whatever you call them. You don't need sleds. You don't need parachutes. We're just going to go out there. We're going to work on the posture, the pattern, and the movement itself. Okay, so exercises to reinforce the posture and the pattern. Those are can be the mock drills, the A skips, the A runs, the B runs, all that stuff that I discussed a little earlier in this video. The posture, wall drills, things along those lines. But the meat and potatoes of getting faster is going to be sprinting more. So up your sprint volume in a very, very calculated way. If you have any questions with that, just shoot me an email, shoot me a message here on YouTube. I can answer a personal question if I have more details. But we just want to check those boxes, and then we want consistency. Consistently hit the program. And if anybody wants to learn more about anything that I've talked about in this video, you can go to epochperformance.com. I have some articles there. You can shoot me a question, like I said, emails, everything like that's connected on the website. I have my program, the Epoch Elite Speed, Epoch Speed program. It's a downloadable PDF. It's on my Instagram. If you just go, links in the bio. I actually have a free speed program in the stories on Instagram too. So good amount of free information for you to kind of get an actual laid out, detailed speed program for some of the information I'm talking about. But like I said, I would not look at speed as a short-term improvement. But I do understand in the current sports landscape, sometimes we have a brief window to focus on something, especially in the younger club sports that kind of landscape that's going on today. So that's about it for this video. Like I said, download my program. Ask me any questions you have. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I have a ton of other speed content coming out. Go ahead. I'm sure if it recommends, just click on the next video, right? Because speed is something that really I think every athlete should be at least have a base level of knowledge on. And that's kind of my goal here with these videos I'm putting out, is to really just help educate the youth, the parents, the coaches, everybody, so that we can start focusing on really what is one of the most coveted athletic attributes. But that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you enjoyed this one. Talk to you next time.